Fire Church. Thank you so much, Rory. With that said, we wanted you to understand why Rory was here today. Rory has told the children the real Easter story, and Rory wants some pictures. Rory can't see too good. And they say carrots are good for your eyes. Who knows? God bless you once again. Thank you for being here. We want to get ready for the worship of the Lord today and what the message is upon my heart. You're going to find out if you've been to church on a lot of Easter Sundays. Pastor Steve's a little bit different. This is probably not what you were expecting.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Cousin, my man, where's that shit? I'm just like $2,000. You were like $5,000. Just $5,000. That's about $2,000. I need $5,000, not $2,000 thing, man. Don't do this to me.
Well, don't be unreasonable. You're not dealing with Johnny Bananas. Come on.
No, I know I deal with Johnny Bananas, but count my money. You know, look, I said slow for you. Look, I need $5,000. Read my name. $5,000 is what I need. Hey, buddy, what you doing here? It just stopped, man. It just stopped. You got some jumbo cables, you give me a jump. Yeah, don't I know you from someplace? Nah, man, that ain't me. I'm from Buffalo.
Both you guys, break out some ID.
What does that have to do with Easter, Pastor? I enjoyed the clip, but I don't have a clue where you're going. Well, maybe that's why you needed to be here today, because I think, as I was saying earlier, that people have got confused what Jesus is all about. I was reading something the other day, and it was talking about how God pursues us. And if you know Pastor's mind, it just can't stop there. And I began to think of pursuits, and my mind went to hot pursuits and speed chases and all this kind of stuff, because do you understand this morning that that is exactly the way He looks at you? He is pursuing you today. He is chasing after you. He is no holds barred. If you were here the other day, you understood what that means. And He's doing everything He can to reach you. So today, my message for Easter Sunday is hot pursuit. What does that mean? If you look it up, it actually means this: eagerly trying to follow or catch something. You need to understand today that in your life, when you're going and doing everything you want to do, you're just thinking that you're the one making decisions and you're deciding everything, there is somebody following you 24/7, 365, because He is eagerly trying to catch you and pursue you. You may not have understood it yet, but you are His love interest. He loves you this morning. He, meaning God, is in pursuit, or hot pursuit, if we want to use my terminology today, one way or another. He's either pursuing you to catch you because you aren't His yet, or if you are His, He's pursuing you because He wants to bless you. And you're going to find out by the end of this message today and decide which place you find yourself in. You see, the God we see in Scripture from Genesis all the way to Revelation is a God who loves in spite. It doesn't matter what you've done, where you've been, why you've done it, what your excuses are. You know, I used to be of this persuasion. You know, there's a lot of psychiatrists and psychologists that say you're a product of your environment. Now, to a certain extent, I realize environment plays a big part in our lives. But at the same time, I know we are human, we are flesh, and we are looking for an excuse. You might say, Pastor, that's a little bit harsh. Where are you coming from? I'm coming from a place that had every reason to say I should be a product of my environment. I was born in 1960 to a lady who was already in her third marriage. We're not talking about 2010 and 2017 when that's commonplace. In 1960, it wasn't commonplace. She divorced him before I turned 1. My mother then married another man who was in his second marriage. So in 1962, my mom and dad had 5 marriages between them. He was an alcoholic. He would run off. One time he ran off and left us, and he ran off to Florida on a drunk, couldn't get back. I had a 15-year-old brother that had to hop on a Greyhound bus and go down and keep enough of Daddy's money every day that he would stop spending it in the bars so they could get a bus trip back home. He had to miss 2 or 3 weeks of school to go get his drunk daddy. We moved 3 times in 8 years because bill collectors caught up to us. I was not in the same school system very often. And if you haven't noticed yet, I used to be. I say that because I've lived down here so long. I used to be a Yankee. I'm a Texan now. One of our houses in one winter. I mean, talk about cold. I mean, Mama placed so many blankets on us, we literally could not move. It was like 10 of them on us. You woke up in the morning and you hurt, but you were warm. You got up in the morning, there was no heat. She literally had to break the ice in the commode. My 2 older brothers, the one 15-year-old brother I mentioned, and my older brother than him that was 5 years older, Mike and Tom, they turned to drugs because of the lifestyle that they were living. They were doing something that was real popular back in the day. They done LSD and mainlining heroin. My brother had pictures on file at Madison, Wisconsin, because there were so many track marks on his arm. He was putting them between his toes, in the corners of his eyes, and all this kind of stuff. They were caught for transporting drugs across state lines. When my oldest brother died, they actually dug him back up in an inquest because they thought there was some criminal activity involved. So don't tell me about your environment. I could use that as a crutch, but you know what? I found somebody that loved me. His name is Jesus Christ. So me and my younger brother are both men of the cloth. Aren't you glad? Because it'd be bad if we didn't have cloth. That means we'd be naked. Although I do say I look pretty good today. If you only come on Easter Sunday, don't expect to come next Sunday and see me in this. It ain't happening. Some of you are probably already taking side bets out in the hall. How long you think you're going to keep it on? Do what? No, I know how to tie a tie. My goodness. I hadn't bought Easter clothes in forever, so we was shopping the other night, and this suit caught my eye and is on sale. That helped my eye a whole lot. I decided to get it. Well, anyway, I was dressing this morning. Terry said, "You get new shoes too?" Because they're all shiny. I said, "No, they're my funeral shoes." You think that's funny, but I said that in all seriousness, because you wear shoes all the time that get scuffed up, so these are my marrying and burying shoes. And I thought that was fitting today because I've preached burials, I've preached weddings, but I've never preached, I get to preach resurrections. Oh, goodness. Well, how'd I get off and all that? Oh, He loves you despite of that. He loves you no matter what your life was. So don't use it as an excuse. God loves you. He knows you. And yet He still loves you. It's all about you. Some of you may know me that on the side for the last 30 years, I was a dealer of my own kind. I still am. Little Debbie cakes. Some of you is addicted to them as other stuff, but don't go into rehab. I need you to buy them, so don't do that. You already found out I'm like no other, didn't you? This store, these went out of, they sold their business and another company took them over, but it was Big Star grocery stores in Louisiana. And they had a motto, and the people wore it on their shirts all the time, and it says, "It's all about you." They wanted the customers to know that everything they'd done was about them. They took pride in their service and taking care of the customers and having the products ready and meeting their every need. And they wanted the customer to know that all that was done for them. Sometimes I think the church has gotten away from letting the world know it's all about them. It's all about them. Ministering to them, reaching them. The long run, Jesus doesn't care how big this building is, how pretty this building is, or if I'm in a suit or if I'm in jeans. He cares where my heart's at. He cares where your heart's at. He loves programs, and I know He was involved in our program yesterday, but it's all about reaching the people. It's not about magnifying us or this church or anything like that. It's about the people. I was thinking this morning, and in my office as I was going over the message and trying to prepare some more, and I think our holidays are reversed in heaven, John. Down here, for Christians, Christmas and Easter, they're the biggies. Wow, everybody, you go to church that day, we're going to honor God that day. It's all about Him and all that kind of stuff. And we get here, and on Christmas, there's manger scenes, and there's shepherds, and there's sheep, and there's donkeys, and all this kind of stuff. And because it's all about Jesus being born. And then on Easter, we come, and there's crosses and empty tombs and all these kinds of things, because it's all about what Jesus done for us. But you see, there's a different perspective in heaven. You see, the angels, they look at this from a totally different view. When they celebrate Christmas in heaven, I don't know if they do, but if they did, you know what I imagine they see? Oh, Sundamoko Santa Maha. They see every person that's ever been saved. And they got pictures of them. And they're sitting around and they're shouting, "Glory to God, that person got saved, that lady got saved, that man got saved, that child got saved." You see, in heaven, they don't worship a manger. They don't look at a manger. They're looking at the results of Jesus coming. And so it's a celebration. And then the Easter is the same thing. Instead of seeing Jesus on the cross in the empty tomb, they see everybody kneeling at the foot of the cross. And the angels stand by dumbfounded. Oh, how He must love you. He left this place to be born on your world. That angel probably says, and I can't imagine why he would do that because it is so beautiful here. Why would he go down to that despicable place? He must love you. And then on Easter, I think the angels have tears in their eyes. Because you see, even the Bible says there's a song we can sing that the angels cannot sing. It's the song of the redeemed. That Jesus came and died for me and bled for me that I might be saved and I might be His. And I think with tears in their eyes, they look at all those people at the altar and say, how He must love you. Amen. That He paid such a price for you. You see, He's pursuing you. And God refuses to give up. Ever. He doesn't give up on us, the church, the ones that have came into the family of God. He never gives up on those who have left the church. You know, the sad thing is there's a lot of churches today that people at one time were vibrant and going there and they had a relationship with Christ, but they allowed life, problems, sin, sometimes other people, cause them to drift away and they're out of church. And sometimes the church pursues them for a while, but eventually they give up, but God never gives up on them. He doesn't give up on the church. He doesn't give up on those who have left the church. And He doesn't give up on those who have never even been a part of the church. He's the God who pursues us relentlessly. You ever really thought about that word? I looked it up, and relentless literally means this: showing no abatement. That means no stop, no hesitation, no lightening, no loosening of intensity or strength. He's relentless to pursue you. And nothing will keep Him from it. Nothing will stop. Oh, you may shut your heart. You may turn Him out of your life. You may ignore Him. You may run from Him. But it doesn't mean anything because He is still coming time and time and time again. Why? He loves you. It's all about you. That's what this whole thing's about. That's what this whole book is about. A love story of how much He loves you and what He's willing to do to show that love to you. I looked up some other words that are synonyms of relentless. It means unending, nonstop, continuous, persistent. And then it summed it up all in this one sentence. After it give all these things, it says, when you are relentless, you mean business. God means business this morning. And what is His business about? It's about you. It's all about you. I want to talk about 4 areas that we can see God's hot pursuit and His hot pursuit of us. What does it mean? And the first thing I want to talk about is this. Hot pursuit says, I'm in love. You ever been in love? When you're in love, I just wrote this down, hand wrote it on the side. Love is dumb. Love is stupid. It's not so much it, but what it makes you do. Guys will act silly. They get clumsy. You know, I can remember when guys start tripping around, they say, what's the matter, you in love or something like that? It's like their focus is gone, you know. And they'll do things they would never do. I remember this young lady on the front up here that I've been married to this year, in May, which is not too far away now, 35 years. And when I first started dating with her, I'd only been dating with her for 2 weeks, you know, and so I was already smitten by that love bug. And so I didn't want her to get away. And so now we're talking 35 years ago. I went to the jewelry store. It used to be a jewelry store over by Payne and Payne's on the corner over there. And I went in there, and I found a cross necklace. I just said, oh yeah, I'm getting that for her. How much is it? $100. $100 is a lot now, let alone 35 years ago. And so I didn't have $100. So I went to my brother, who was 5 years younger than me, and said, Shane, I need to borrow some money. He said, what you going to borrow some money for? I said, I'm buying Terry a necklace, and it's $100, and I only got 50, so can I borrow $50? What are you buying her that? You've only known her for 2 weeks, you know. But in my mind, it made perfect sense. I was in love. And you're laughing, but it worked. I got her for $100. You laugh. I done a wedding for somebody one time. I'm not going to say no names or anything like that, but I done a wedding for somebody one time. And when all the guys were back in the fellowship hall, you know how the guys are bantering around. And one of the groomsmen mentioned to the groom something about, well, what if she gets cold feet and runs out? He said, she better not. I done spent $150 on this thing. Oh, my. Pastors' lives can be very interesting sometimes. Hot pursuit. If he's in hot pursuit of us, it tells us he's in love. We may not love. Sometimes the object of our affection doesn't love us back, and that is very true with God. Many times you're the object of his affection and you don't love him back, but he's in hot pursuit of you. How many deer hunters we got out here? You know, all you have to do is, and I'm glad this is deer, not us, because you just sprinkle a little buck scent and you know what that is. And them bucks come running when you spread that doe scent around. He's hot on your scent. He smells you. He's following you everywhere because he's got one thing on his mind. You know, that's the only reason we can get the bucks, because they're stupid. Because they're chasing the women and they do stupid things. I told you, even in the animal world, it works that way. But they're following that scent. They're on the trail. They got one thing on their mind. Jesus has one thing on his mind today, and it's you. The greatest lie of the devil, he's got a lot of them, but I think we almost all succumb to this one at one time or another in our life. Nobody loves me. Nobody cares for me. If I was to be gone, if I was to die, they wouldn't even notice. You know, John 3:16, verse we all know, says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever should believe in him would not perish but have everlasting life." It says, but Pastor, it says he loves the world. You're the world. And you mean the world to him. You're the reason. A song we used to sing. Now, I'm gonna let the cat out of the bag on something, and probably shouldn't do this, but in the near future, and the reason I'm saying this is because it reminds me of a song. There is a chance that Terry, LaVonda, and myself will reunite our singing group for a special service here one night. And we're going to do it as a fundraiser for the Guatemalan trip. So you be praying Terry gets over a cough, and we hadn't done that in years, and so we're looking to do that. But one of the songs we used to sing sometimes at Christmas was by David Mee, said, "We are the reason." And it says, we are the reason that he gave his life. And it talks about Christmas. And we're big about saying, you know, Jesus is the reason. That's our earth perspective. That's the reason we celebrate Christmas. But like I said, in heaven, it's the opposite. We're the reason of Christmas. He came here for us. But you're the world. He's in hot pursuit of you. He loves you. The second thing is this morning. Hot pursuit. If Jesus is in hot pursuit, it means whatever you're pursuing is worth pursuing. You are worth it. You're valuable enough. You've caught his attention. He desires you. He wants you. There are times in our life when we might not feel as desirable as we do in other times in our life. We might even ask our mate, do you still find me desirable? Am I still attractive? And all this kind of stuff. Jesus always finds you desirable. He finds you attractive. He says you're worth pursuing. You know, we write love notes to each other. Oh, honey pie, bump, honey, pumpkin, bumpkin, all these kinds of things. Jesus has some names for you too. He says, you're the apple of my eye. Now, some of you don't like apples. You say, well, what's that? It meant something to him. He says, you're the pearl of great price. He says you're a treasure that was found in a field. You see, what he said is he found some things. You see, back in those days when you were hungry and you were walking and the journey was long and you're thirsty and you're hungry and you came upon an orchard and there was some fruit on there, there was nothing looked any better than that apple. And you take a big old bite out of it. If if you were somebody that was into jewels and gems and all that kind of stuff, there was nothing of greater value than that perfect pearl. If you were a farmer and you're working and you're digging and you're trying so hard to provide a living and you're living off the land, but all of a sudden one day you find some hidden treasure there. And he was talking about the joy every one of those people experienced in those moments. And he said, that's what I see and that's what I feel when I look upon you, when I desire you. You're the apple of my eye. You're the pearl of great price. You're a treasure in a field. He's got his own little names for you, his own little love names. In Luke 15, and I'm not going to read these, but you might want to write them down. In Luke chapter 15, from verses 1 through 24, we find some interesting things that Jesus describes on how much he loves you and how important you are. He says, you know, if a shepherd has 100 sheep, and one of them goes astray, will he not go after it? He's trying to say the importance of every one, that you're not lost in the crowd. That when you step away from him, he knows it. When you step away and you're out under the elements of this world, he understands you're in danger and he's pursuing you and looking for you because he loves you. It's all about you. The love story says he will do anything to pursue you anywhere, anytime. And then he goes on to tell a story about a lost coin. He says, what if a lady, she has 10 coins and she loses one, will she not sweep and light a lamp and look everywhere and hunt everywhere for it? Because it's so important. Because he said this widow woman needs every bit of that. She can't afford to lose anything. And he's talking about the desire and the need to have it all. And Jesus says, that's the way I feel about you. Do we have any Aggies in here? I wouldn't admit it either, so... It was said, the way to drive an Aggie crazy, put a penny in a square room and tell them put an Aggie in a round room and tell them there's a penny in the corner. Some of you will get that after a while. There's no corners in a round room, okay. And then at the end of those verses, he talks about a lost son. That a son that decides he wants to go his own way. You see, the reality is we find ourselves in all three of these stories, especially the last, the times when we decide to go our own way. God, I got this. I can do it. I can handle it. Just give me enough and I'll go out there. Don't bother with me no more. And whether it takes a little time or a long time, eventually, like the lost son, we wise up a little bit and we say, you know what? It was better being a servant in my Father's house than doing it out here on my own. It's been hard, it's been rough, it's been hurtful. And he'll take care of me. I need to go back. It didn't change his love for that son whatsoever. This morning, this Easter Sunday, maybe you've been away from God. Maybe he hasn't had the time in your life that he used to have. Maybe other things have taken priority. Maybe it's been a long time since you've shared private moments with him and just talked to him and just loved on him. And maybe even been lacking in faithfulness to attending his house and being obedient to his word. But do you know what? If today's the day you said, I'm coming back, he loves you just the same. And he's going to reach his arms open wide and he's going to hug you up tight. Say, where you been? Just in case he was dozing, he could do that. I'm having too much fun today. He's not even going to mention the past. Did you notice that? He never mentioned the past. Why did it take so long? Why did you do that? Why didn't you know better? Nothing. It was just, it's all about now. What matters is you're here now. He's been pursuing you and he's waiting for you to come back, and it's all about now. He don't care about what happened and what was. In the book of Hosea, he gives us probably the most graphic illustration of his love for us outside of the crucifixion in my mind. The crucifixion is a portrayal of love. It's sometimes when people talk about the beauty of the cross, they don't understand. But those that understand the sacrifice of the cross and that it's a picture of love, it's a different story. But in the book of Hosea, Hosea was a prophet. And in the first couple of verses in Hosea chapter 1, it says, when the Lord first began speaking to Israel through Hosea, he said to him, meaning God said to Hosea, and this comes out of the NLT, because when we use words like harlot, you don't understand what that is. So the NLT just puts it plain. God told Hosea, go marry a prostitute. This is a prophet of God. A modern day version would be called a pastor. Go marry a prostitute. What? So that some of her children will be conceived in prostitution. He said, I want you to go marry this prostitute. That means you're going to have a commitment, a bond. You will be her husband and all the duties and stuff that a husband's supposed to perform. But I'm telling you right now, since she was a prostitute, she's still going to live that way. She ain't going to change. And she's going to run out and she's going to have children by other guys. But even though I know all that, I still want you to go marry her. And so then the next verse picks up and says, so Hosea went and married Gomer. This is all I got to say about that.
What's your name?
Don't lie.
Why are you supposed to come in on the bus with the rest of them here, Harry? What happened?
Oh, about that. You see my buddy Andy Taylor offered to drive me down here? That's him over yonder. Say, we're not the Sarge, Andy. Well, anyway, we give ourselves plenty of time, but about halfway here, I got the feeling we was getting a flat. You know how when you're driving along, it starts going to bumps and bumps and bumps. Well, sometimes it's the car and road that causes the bump. But if you know cars and cars the way I do, you can always tell the difference. So we stopped and got out, and sure enough, it stopped, but it wasn't flat. It just a leaky valve. You know how you can tell if a valve's leaking? When you put the spit on one end of it and she bubbles.
4 weeks straight fee for being late.
That's how you can tell you got a leak.
6 weeks straight fee for talking. Boy!
Shazam, Shazam, holy, Shazam. Gosh, holy, Shazam. Gosh, Shazam, Shazam.
Some of you don't have a clue who Gomer was, but that was the only Gomer I knew. So when I read that in the Bible, that's who I pictured Hosea marrying. Now, even if I would never have seen Gomer Pyle, the minute God said, go marry Gomer, I would have had a problem anyway. That just don't... You know how names are? That just don't sound like a gorgeous woman to me. I don't know. You may be different. He says, so go marry Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, and she became pregnant and gave Hosea a son. And we find in Hosea chapter 3, verse 1, it says, then the Lord said to me, meaning Hosea, go and love your wife again. Why? Because she had left him, just like God said. She had left him for not one man, but several men, and had children by several men, and was currently living with somebody else. He said, go and love your wife again, even though she commits adultery with another lover. And then God says to Hosea, this is why I'm doing this. He says, this will illustrate that the Lord still loves Israel, even though the people have turned to other gods and love to worship them.
Amen.
Prophet Hosea became an example of how God would always love his children. Even though his children would have affairs. I preached a message one time about the church having an affair with God. That, you know, an affair is when somebody leaves their real relationship to go have an exciting moment, an exciting time, have feelings and excitement, and then return back to their real relationship. that if we're not careful, we just have an affair with God. We don't have a relation. You see, our real life is our world, our job, our family, our hobbies, our interests, our sports. And once in a while, we go to church, here, there, 1 month, 6 months, and we have an affair with God. The preaching was great. The service was great. He spoke to my heart. He touched me. That's the same thing people say in real affairs. And then we go our own way, living our own life with our real relationship. Wow, that's hard preaching, Pastor. You need to know He loves you even when you do that. And He will take you back. You know, in this world, most people won't. When somebody goes off in an illicit relationship, I ain't having nothing to do with that joker no more. God says, Hosea, I want you to enter this relationship. Is she going to do you wrong? And then later I'm going to tell you to go ahead. And you know what? To top it off, he had to buy her back. You go read the story. He had to pay the man she was living with to get her back. Well, that's horrible. I don't know who bet when. It's 5-12. I'm taking it off. Did not Jesus have to buy you back? The devil had you. This world had you. And the price was set. You can have your bride back. You can have this woman back. But it's going to cost you your life. You're going to have to die on a cross. God says, I want you to do this so they know how much I love them. I got to hurry. Isaiah 54:10 says this. This is God's promise for you and me today. He says this, for the mountains may depart and the hills be removed, but my steadfast love shall not depart from you. It's an unconditional love. It's an unending love. And He's pursuing you today despite what's happened, despite where you've been, despite the promises to do right once again. He said, I'm always here. I'll always take you back. The third thing is this. If God's in hot pursuit of us, it means it's more than just words. People have given us words and promises that they'll love us, that they'll be there forever. But it has to be more than that. If it's hot pursuit, it's showing it's not just words. The actions are now beginning to speak because He's following through with what He has said. I wonder when God revealed the plan to Jesus Himself, you see, because there are things that God knows that Jesus doesn't. We know this because Jesus, when He was here, actually said, I don't know. I'm waiting for the Father to say go. And so when God said, this is my plan and this is what I'm going to do, I could see Him sitting around a table with Jesus and all the angels. This is my plan. You're going to go to earth. You're going to be born. You're going to live like a regular human for about 30 years. Then you're going to start in ministry. And then they're going to do all these horrible things to you. Then you're going to die. You're going to rise again. And I'm hoping that people will accept that and come to know me as their Lord and Savior. And Jesus saying, okay, that sounds like a good plan. But I wonder about the angels. You see, the angels don't have the same perception that God does. I wonder if they began to think that's the most craziest thing I ever heard. You ever remember a show called The A-Team? George Papard, I think was the guy's name. That was the main person on there. And he always come up with these plans, and they would describe the plans, and they would all, that ain't going to work, that is crazy, that's stupid, that don't make any sense. That's why God says, I use the foolish thing to confound the wise. But then at the end of the show, when it actually worked, and sometimes it was crazy, he'd have that big old cigar in his mouth, and he'd say, I love it when a plan comes together. God's plan put into action showed it was more than words of just saying, I love you. It was more than the most beautiful Hallmark card you could ever get. His pursuit meant it was more than words. Romans 5:8 says this, but God shows His love for us, and now that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. It's always been one of my favorite Bible verses. I mean, I've got so many, but this is always at the top of the list. It means a lot to me because in my life, I wasn't always a good person. And I understand in this world how it's easy to love nice people, and it's not easy to love people that are harmful and hurtful and rude and disrespectful to you. We don't always think of ourselves in a relationship with God like that. But to be honest, that's the way we once were. Sin does that to us. And he says, I don't, and that's why I don't have to worry about cleaning myself up to come to God. He loved me as I was. And he loved me too much to leave me as I was. But he loved me while I was yet a sinner. And I was thinking this as a pastor, since I got my Marian shoes on. I was thinking about marriage. And I'm going to get to do that this week with somebody. I was thinking about the vows, and a lot of people, they've gotten away from the traditional vows, but there was one thing that was so important about the traditional vows. It went beyond just physical love to the deep emotional, spiritual love, and what love was really all about, because it would say, do you take them in sickness and in health? You see, it's easy to love the healthy person. It's not easy to love the sick person. And you see, the thing is, on the day of our marriage, most of the time, health abounds. But it's a marriage to the end, and so what happens when one is debilitated, when one is paralyzed, one is crippled, one's stricken by cancer? In this day and time, we see so many people leave, not be at their side. Was that ever love? Because true love is tough love. It loves when it hurts. It loves when it's hard. That's why we know his love is true. He loved you while you were a sinner at your worst. It says for richer or poorer. It's easy to love the rich man. I love rich men. Wish we had more of them in our church. But true love is, Dallas Holmes sang a song, "At my worst, you found me, and at my worst, you loved me." I try to counsel couples sometimes, saying, hey, dude, let me wake you up to something. When you wake up, since you're on the front, she ain't going to look like that. I have known some women in my time that said they would get up an hour earlier than their husband on purpose so they could have themselves made up before their husband awoke. How many women say amen to that? I didn't think so. It's a surprise for some guys. I've literally met women before without their makeup that I'd never seen without makeup, and I didn't recognize them. It was like, hey, pastor. It takes a minute. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. Now, I'll just leave it right there. Well, she said it, I didn't. Women, let me tell you something. That man that you're about to marry, he's coming to you as a knight in shining armor on a white steed. But believe me, a couple of weeks later, he'll be riding a donkey. So don't be surprised. But true love loves them in those moments. His love is more than words. It's action. Our worst, and it says till death do us part. And I want you to understand, he will pursue you just like the marriage vows till death do us part. And I was thinking of that the other day while I was driving along, and it made so much sense, because you see, why would he stop then? Because if you have chosen to deny his love, not accept his love, the day you die, it is over. He can't pursue you into hell. He will pursue you till your last breath. Never give up. What a love that is. Psalms 139, I don't have time to read this, but you need to read it, because the psalmist is talking about the wonders of God and how God knows everything about him. Even forming him in the womb to the point of knowing the words he's going to speak before he even speaks them. I wish he would let me in on that sometimes. It would save me a lot of trouble. If he'd say, you're about to say this, don't say it. If you know I'm going to say it, God, keep me from it, please. But the psalmist says it's all about how much God and how deeply God knows us. But you need to know he knows you. The good, the bad, and ugly, yet he still loves you. And he's pursuing you and chasing after you. There used to be a song that said, I can't stop loving you. It should have been wrote about him. He can't stop loving you. No matter what you do in this world, you can get people to stop loving you by your words, your actions, your attitude. You cannot make Him stop loving you. He looks at you every day with admiration and love in His heart. And I can just see Him sing that song, I can't stop loving you. What a man He is that loves you so deeply. What determines worth? Why would He be so interested in you and pursuing you? Why are you so valuable? You see, what determines worth is not the seller. You can put any price you want on something. I've been in retail all my life. The seller cannot determine the price. Ultimately, what determines the price is the buyer. If you don't have nobody to purchase it at the price you want for it, you stuck with it. So it's the purchaser that decides the price. God is the purchaser, and He set the price. And He set it so high that nobody could pay it. Only His Son. And Jesus was willing to pay for it. The Scripture says that He was obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. That's what we're talking about today. That's why this is the greatest love story. That's why it shows the pursuit. Easter and Christmas both show God's pursuit of you. It's what He was willing to do to pursue you. You see in this verse that sin is what put Jesus on the cross, but it's love that held Him there. He could have called 10,000 angels to destroy the world and set them free. Why didn't He do it? He was pursuing you. And He was willing to see it through to the end. Ray Boltz, a man that struggled with a lot of things in his life. I pray he's corrected those, but he wrote some amazing songs. And one of those songs was called The Hammer. And it's a song about somebody witnessing the crucifixion and the brutal beatings of Jesus Christ. And as he stands there and he sees this, he's overwhelmed. How could somebody do this? And he yells out, he said, who could do this? And he said, I turned and I saw the hammer in my hand. You see, we're the guilty ones. We're the ones that caused Him to die. You know, I hear a lot of stories sometimes where people have forgiven, somebody's done something brutal to their child or to their spouse or a family member, killed them, raped them, abused them, done something like that. And then the family will come along and they'll say, well, I forgive them. But think about it this way. Could you forgive your own murderer? The one that killed you, the one that actually did it. The one that shot you. You meet them in the afterlife. Could you forgive them? Could you forgive your own murderer? You see, Jesus done that on the cross. He said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. That is true love, love that loves in despite. Even as they were killing Him, He was loving them. And I think, without a doubt, it affected at least one man there that day. Because there was a centurion that when it all happened said, surely this was the Son of God. The last thing is this. We said hot pursuit lets us know Jesus is saying, I'm in love with you. Hot pursuit means He says you're worth pursuing. Hot pursuit means it's more than words. It's going to be actions. And the last thing is hot pursuit requires a great love. Jesus Himself said, no greater love hath any man than this, that he would lay down his life for his friends. And I call you my friends. What was He saying there? I'll die for you. In the Scriptures we find another place, it says that, that sometimes somebody will die for somebody. For a righteous man, you might find somebody to die for a righteous man. But you see, He died for the unrighteous. Where somebody might say, they're a good person, I'll die for them because they're a good person. Would you die for the vilest offender in the worst prison in the United States? If there's a fine, upstanding family member in town and something happened to him, you would say, you know what, I'll die for them. They need to live. But if they said, tomorrow this guy's going to face execution for the vile crimes he has done, would anybody stand up for him and say, I will die for him? You see, perspective changes things. When it says, while we were yet sinners, Jesus said, I'll die for you at your worst. He said, yeah, you can find somebody who'll die for a good person sometimes, but I'm dying for the worst people. Something that brings us up to the modern times is something that just happened recently. You may have seen the video of the man being pulled off United Air flight. A lot of stories going back and forth, but none of them justify what happened. No matter what stories are right and true, it didn't justify what happened to the man. And this happened just the other day, and I want to read this to you. It says, the daughter and attorney of Dr. David Dow held a news conference. This was just like 2 days ago. The attorney said when his client was forcibly evicted from United Flights airline, he suffered a concussion, a broken nose, and lost 2 front teeth. Now, as this United firestorm continues, Dr. David Dykes, and this brought it home because this is close to us, the longtime pastor of Green Acres Baptist Church in Tyler, Texas, was being interviewed, and this is what he said regarding the man being pulled from the flight. He said, my first thought was this: when they are dragging this bleeding, unconscious man off the plane, why didn't somebody stand up and say, let him go, I'll take his place, take me off the plane instead? He said, I don't know about you, but I'm glad 2,000 years ago, when I should have been rejected, beaten and bloodied and hung on a cross, Jesus stepped forward and said, let him go. I'll take his place. You see, there was a lot of outrage on what happened, but nobody volunteered to take his place. Nobody said, you can have my seat. I'll take the $800 voucher. I don't have to be home tomorrow. I don't have patients to see. I don't have a family. I'm not old. I can get off this plane. They just wanted to gripe and complain. Jesus sees you being carried through this life, and you're hurt, you're bloodied, you're hurt, you're wounded, you're going through a lot of things. He says, I'm in hot pursuit of you, and it's more than words, and I'll prove it that there's no greater love. I'll take your place. The last thing is this. I said that he's pursuing us whether to catch us or to bless us. Psalms 23. And I'm going to preach a full message on this one day, but I just want to mention it today because if you're in the house of God today, you might say, well, Pastor, I've been in a relationship with God for a long time. Is he still pursuing me? Oh, yeah. He never loses interest in the love of his life. But now it's a different kind of pursuit. Sometimes he has to try to chase us down to bless us because we're caught up in life and we're running. And it says this, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. The literal translation of that root word, follow, this is the only place they translate it follow. Every other time it's translated either in a word of pursuing or hunting down. He's relentless. If you're his, he's relentless chasing after you to bless you and be with you and love you. And if you're not his, he's relentless after you to make you his, to convince you to be in a relationship with him. This last video, the praise team's getting ready to come up. It's called The Sounds of the Cross. And I think it's fitting that shows us how he has pursued us through this Easter holiday.